The difference between people always comes down to the standards that they have for themselves. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Start Today podcast. I'm your host, Chris Cavallini. I have to apologize because we've been on a slight delay, guys. I did not drop a podcast last week. And look, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I have a lot of shit going on. And that's no excuse because this is a huge priority for me. But I've been getting your messages, and it means a lot that you actually notice when we're absent a week. But we're back in the studio, ready to drop some fucking fire today. We have an amazing show for you. Before we get into that, I want to introduce my co-host in the building, Rick Schaff. Rick, what up?
Hey, everybody. Good to be here.
What's new, man? You're looking kind of sporty in that Puma tracksuit.
It's like the last cold day in Florida, probably.
Yeah, we can embrace it.
Yeah,
and it's not even very cold, man. It's like 58 degrees. But,
yeah.
but when in Florida, for our listeners, if you don't know, in Florida, anytime it drops below 64, people tend to start pulling out scarves and hoodies and shit like that.
Yeah, you gotta wear it. Yeah, you got it in your closet.
So guys, yeah, thank you for tuning in today. Really quickly, I know every episode we have a lot of new listeners, so I want to quickly just give a synopsis for those of you guys who've been listening for a while, listening since day one. First of all, thank you. Really appreciate your patience while we just give a brief description, narrative, bio, if you will, about what the Start Today podcast is all about. So making a long story short, this podcast is about teaching people the mentality, the mindset, and the practical action steps that are needed to just live our best life. We're going to teach you, we're going to help you learn to think different. We're going to help you basically develop a new, higher perspective. And we're going to show you a better way of doing things through our own experiences, through our trials, through our tribulations, through our failures. The most valuable lessons in life. And we have an amateur in the building today, ladies and gentlemen.
Geez.
Come on now. Ringer on. That's Rick. That's kind of offsets the topic here regarding what we're going to talk about today. But nevertheless, guys, no, honestly, you did that on purpose, right? Sure. Thank you for pointing that out. But guys, no, seriously, for those of you who are just tuning in, if you are somebody who's looking to get better in literally any area of life, regardless of where you're at in life, you've come to the right place. I could sit here and I could talk this up. But if you're looking, I guess, for maybe a little more validation, regarding, what it is we do here, feel free to go to the, to iTunes, check out our review section. There's some awesome reviews in there that people have taken the time to leave that have, that really paint the picture of, what we do. And they went ahead and have shared the impact listening to our podcast has made in their life. And there's some really, really incredible testimonies on there. Not enough, I will say. There's a disproportionate number of people listening to people leaving reviews. Obviously, I have to do a better job communicating to our listeners just how important those reviews are to us.
And when they're good, they make us feel pretty good.
Yeah, they make us feel amazing. They help us grow. They help us reach more people. And I'll certainly work to continue to spread that knowledge so people know. But if you know, you know, and, without further ado, we're going to get into it. Today, guys, we're going to talk about something that, I've talked about. I talk about it all the time. It's literally the most important thing as it relates to progress, to continuing to raise the bar and accomplishing success at new levels. Yeah. We're going to talk about standards. And I know I've beaten this horse to death as it relates to standards. But what I've realized is, although we've talked a lot about standards and how important they are, I don't know that we've ever given a formatted template outline or just had a discussion on what exactly it means to have high standards in your professional and personal life. We've alluded to it a number of times. We, maybe haphazardly have given examples during other discussions, but I don't know that we've ever specifically really kind of nailed in on, specifically what it means to actually demonstrate high standards in both your professional and personal life. Because Rick, one thing that I'm seeing, and that I have seen is just I guess a lack of awareness of what exactly it means to have high standards. And just through my interactions with some people, I've observed that there are certain people who believe themselves to have high standards when, from their perspective,
Yeah.
From their experience, perhaps that seems to be accurate, yet
I can identify with that. I remember being young and foolish and meeting people that were way the hell better than me and going, okay, how do I get to be like that? And then learning.
Yeah. I mean, and I can empathize with this to a very high degree because, just a few years ago, I mean, I thought my standards were high. Now looking back on it, I mean, I'm embarrassed by them. So it's all a matter of perspective and the way that, we learn and develop and get better at something is we look at people who are doing it. We look at people who have done it. We look at people who have experience in that thing and we model what they do. And it's as simple as that. And if you could learn to do that, if you can learn to just to be smart and to I think a good example of what being smart means is essentially just learning to realize that there's always a better way of doing things. Even if you're doing good, even regardless if you're doing bad, you're doing good. If you're doing good, just being open, always being open to the fact there's a better way of doing things.
Yeah. And I think also understanding that standards are very personalized depending what you want in your life. So there's not like a clear cut path.
There's different areas that, depending on industry, depending on, I mean, are you look, we have people that listen to this show that are just starting out, young kids. And then we have people, in their 50s that have successful businesses. Yeah. So depending on where you're at, different things will apply, certainly. But at the end of the day, there are some universal principles as it relates to high standards and demonstrating high standards and applying high standards. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So let's just jump right into it, man. So I've said before, I'll say it again. The difference in people always comes down to their standards. It's not that their performance, it's not the results, it's not, how fortunate they've been up to, this point of their life. The difference between people always comes down to the standards that they have for themselves, because those standards determine so many other things. Those standards determine, how physically fit you are. Those standards determine how much money you make. Those standards determine so many things, and people need to really just become aware of that. The standards that we set for ourselves, meaning like a standard is just that. This is it. This is a clear cut line that I'm drawing in the sand, and I refuse to settle for anything less than this. Yeah. So again, it's not skills, it's not experience, it's not education, it's not specialized training, it's not the fact that, you didn't have a mentor, you didn't have the support. It comes down to the standards that you set for yourself. Yeah. Now,
I was going to say, Tony Robbins says it. He says that when your shoulds become your musts,
right?
That's your standards,
right?
And I like that saying.
Yeah. So basically, the way that we change our life is by raising our standards. Now, this isn't a one-time shot, right? We're not like a one-trick pony. We have to realize that the key to living an extraordinary life is constantly seeking the next level, constantly looking to make progress and constantly looking to evolve. The key to happiness in life is progress. The way that we make progress is by continuing to raise our standards. So when we raise our standards, well, what exactly does that mean? It means exactly what you just said. It means turning your shoulds into musts. Yeah. Simply put, that's what it means to raise our standards, because everybody knows, right? They should be eating a little healthier. Everybody knows they should be working out more. Everybody knows they should be working a little harder and putting in the extra time and, educating themselves to learn more about their craft, about their trade, about their profession, to where, they have an opportunity to advance and make more money. Yeah. But it's not until those shoulds become musts. I mean, if that doesn't happen, transformation does not occur. So at the end of the day, when a should becomes a must, you find a way to get it done.
Yeah, you must.
Exactly.
Right?
When you change your should into a must, all of a sudden you find that hour in the day, right? You have that energy. Like you have the ability to make it fucking happen regardless of what has to happen. Your should becomes a must, and then you fucking get it done. And that's how we raise our standards, guys. An example of not raising our standards is going on a diet, right? We decide that, oh shit, I got this trip coming up and I look like shit, or you get tagged in a photo on social media and you look at it and they caught you at a bad angle and your shit's hanging over your waistline, your muffin tops are protruding out of your t-shirt or dress, whatever the case is. Like, then you're like, oh fuck, all right, I have to go on a diet. I have to go on a diet. And what ends up happening when most people go on diets, ultimately, they come back with the vengeance.
Yeah.
And that's not raising a standard. It's not what we do some of the time.
It's a temporary standard.
Yeah. And that's what I see a lot of in the world, unfortunately. We see a lot of people that.
It's true. But that's why we have leaders, right? Because leaders are the guys that have standards, and they have the highest standards. That's how you become a leader, right? Yeah.
So again, like when we decide to make any sort of change in our life, personally, professionally, whether it's with our finances, whether it's our body, our health, our relationships, our community involvement, seeking out more time to work on a hobby, maybe play an instrument, maybe, you like going hiking and all this. Like, it's not what we do some of the time that defines us. It's not what we do, even if it's a couple months, it has to become part of who we are. And the only way that it happens is by transforming your should into a must. Because a lot of people listening to this podcast, listen, to a certain degree, in certain instances, I'm guilty of this. Like, we start something new and we go strong for, the period of time, it's going to fluctuate depending on what the new thing is. But what I see happening most times is when, as soon as like a curveball is like thrown in like the mix, right, sure, things get tough. There's like an added stressor that gets mixed into the equation. All of a sudden, that new thing that, you were really excited and really motivated to begin doing, all of a sudden it gets put on the back burner. And ultimately, you deviate back to your normal patterns, your normal way of doing things, the way that you've done things for the majority of your life. Yep. When you change your should to a must, that does not fucking happen.
And it's the key to everything, because like Chris just said, most people won't have that standard to keep going forward. Like when the race gets hard, it's easy to start a race. It's hard to finish a race, especially if it's a marathon, right? But if you finish strong, then you're way ahead of most people.
True. And what you had mentioned about leaders, look, at the end of the day, leadership doesn't necessarily mean you're, in charge of other people. It doesn't mean that, you have high expectations of everybody else. Being a leader simply means that you have very high expectations of yourself. Yeah. And whether or not you're directly responsible for other people, that has a way of moving and influencing people, because that is what leadership is. And, leadership, again, like we've alluded to this in many podcasts, like, look, for those of you who are listening who might think to themselves, oh, well, I'm not a leader, this doesn't apply to me. No, it absolutely applies to you. Everybody that's listening to this podcast, everybody that is walking the face of the earth is a leader at something. And I will tell you, the most successful people in this world, the most successful people that time has ever produced, they were all leaders. And the thing about leadership is, although it's very, very difficult, it's also the most rewarding thing that anybody can ever experience, because the fulfillment that you achieve by, leading people in a positive, productive way that helps that person get better in any number of ways, that fulfillment, that pride, that gratification, it's literally the best fucking feeling. It's very hard to describe to, people who haven't experienced it. Yeah. But that's why leadership gets put on a pedestal. Mm-hmm. Not just because it's important, but because it's rewarding. So our standards are usually determined, no, not usually, our standards are determined by our environment, right? They're determined by the people we spend the most time with. and like where you spend your time, and you know who you spend your time with, where you spend your time, it ultimately determines who you become.
Yeah.
Which is why it's very important that, you know, if for some reason, I mean, in most situations, we are in control of who we spend our time with and where we spend our time. There are certain situations and exceptions to that. So if you are in one of those situations or in one of those exceptions, you need to make sure that, you know, you're demonstrating high standards at all times to where you have the ability and opportunity to influence people in a positive way and bring them up to your level, as opposed to you simply being in that environment and allowing them, which is a choice, to drag them down to theirs.
Sure.
So I want to just like jump right in here, guys, and I want to make this as efficient as possible today, you know, with this episode, because I got some really good stuff here. I know it's going to help a lot of people. I mean, it's only going to help a lot of people if you apply it, but I know that the people who listen to this are doers. They're not just consumers and listen to the shit to get motivated and then go and do a fucking thing about it. Hopefully nobody's listening that fits that bill, because the feeling that you get when you get a little pumped up, listen to me talk, whatever, dude, that's nothing. That's 10% of the feeling of when you actually go and execute and reap the rewards and manifest the results. So let's just dive into it and give some examples of, we'll start with, you know, in a professional capacity, just some examples of, you know, what it means to have high standards. First thing, you have to take pride in your mission, your work, and your workspace. All right. It doesn't matter if you like don't love what you do, although, you know, you'll hear that, oh, you got to love what you do. At the end of the day, it's twofold. You absolutely can learn to love what you do. And secondly, sometimes you have to work your way up. You have to work your way, you know, through the ranks. You have to gain experience to position yourself to be able to get a job or start a business or be in a company where you can actually love what you do. And the way that you'll get there, the only way you'll get there, is by cultivating habits and traits and basically ingraining, you know, a standard of excellence with what you do now. How you do one thing is how you do all things. And that it doesn't like it. It's not something that like people would like to think that the reason, you know, they don't go above and beyond, the reason they don't do a little more, the reason they're not kicking ass in what they're currently doing is because they don't really like it. They don't like their boss. They don't like the company. They don't give a shit about what the company does. No. I will tell you that that's simply untrue, because standards are standards. They're not things that apply, you know, every other Tuesday, every third week of the month, right? Like once a quarter. Yeah. They're not things that apply if you work here, if you work there. They're not things that like you're going to do. It's just, it's who you are. It's who you are. It doesn't matter. None of those things matter. And I implore people who might feel that that's actually a thing to realize that, it's a mentality issue. I mean, you gotta know that. You gotta recognize that. The only way we fix something is recognizing it's an issue. And the way that I'm able to just like so passionately and confidently speak on this is because like that was me. I mean, I didn't start really liking my own company. I didn't start really caring about our mission because I didn't like create the mission in my head. I wasn't like, no. I didn't gain the perspective of what the hell we're really doing here until, like 5 years in. And that's the honest to God truth. So like, if anybody is intelligently qualified to speak on this topic, it's me. I mean, I did not like my own company for 5 years because I failed to recognize like the depth and the scope and the real mission of what we were doing. I was so fucking stressed out. I was viewing it as like, oh, I'm selling food. I don't care about food. I don't have a background in food. Yeah, I was trying to make money. When I was trying so hard to make money, I wasn't making any. Imagine that. Yeah. So it wasn't until I realized and just, you know, my mindset started to change. I realized what our mission was here, which is to help people, which is to provide people the resources, the tools, the accountability, the education, the information, the support, the push to make them do the things that I knew through my experience helped me change my life. And that is when everything started to change. That's when everything started to change from our culture. That's when everything started to change with me, as far as me feeling good and being happy and being able to innovate and move the company forward. And that's when also when I started to make money.
Yeah. Imagine that.
Yeah, shit. So look, guys, whether, you're a mechanic whose mission is to help people who are, I don't know, having difficulty with their vehicles by fixing their cars in the shortest time possible in the most efficient manner and at the most reasonable price, right? A waiter or waitress, or really anyone in the hospitality industry whose mission is to provide the best possible service and experience to your patrons, that come into your establishment. Or if, you're someone who does administrative work and you're solely responsible for making sure that people on your team have what they need to execute and accomplish the company's mission. It doesn't matter. You have to take pride in what you do. And it literally starts with like your workspace, maintaining a clean, neat, organized workspace, showing up prepared every day, ready to kick ass.
Yep.
Okay. Showing up every day with an agenda. Guys, I'm just going to say like this part, and I want to like just maybe just stop the momentum and the flow, because I really want this to get through to you. I really, really, really want this to get through to you. Here it goes. Mm-hmm. If you get up every day before you go to work and you don't have like a list of targets, a list of the tasks that you need to do that day, like you do not have high standards. I want you to, for those of you who don't do that, I want you to just take that in. I know it stings a bit. It should sting, but it's only through like painful realizations and revelations are we able to actually have that perspective and paradigm shift and understand that there is a better way of doing things. It is physically fucking impossible for you to have high standards if you don't have a plan and are not prepared for every day. I don't care how sharp your memory. I don't care if it's in your head. Look, every high achiever in the history of achievement does what we're talking about today. They have a plan. You have to have a fucking plan.
When you think about it, everything is standards. You wake up and what do? I mean, for me, like I start with nutrition right away, right? And all these different things we do all day, all the little things allow you to get to the bigger things.
Yeah. And we're going to dive into that, as it relates to on the personal side of things. But guys, you absolutely have to have a plan. You have to write down the critical tasks that you're looking to accomplish that day. Okay. Because as high achievers, as people who not want to win, people who are going to win, people who are going to fucking dominate, we have to make sure that we have a game plan in place, a contract that we make with ourselves every single day that, no matter, come hell, high water, or fucking brimstone, that we get the things done that we need to get done to move ourselves closer to our bigger goals and the bigger picture. So we come in every day prepared to a neat, organized, and clean workspace. All right. And we show up looking like we're ready to kick ass, looking like we're somebody who's not to be fucked with, looking like someone who actually gives a shit, right? Like someone who like you, if you walk into a room, like, let's say you walk into an organization and, walk into an open area where there's many employees in there, like without knowing anything about anybody in there, like typically you will be able to tell based off somebody's physical appearance, based by the way they're dressed, their posture, that like they're the one who's in charge, or they're the one who's like the one who gets shit done. Yeah. You want to be that guy or girl. I mean, it starts with that confidence. It builds your confidence, and it also builds, and adds on to the other things that we're going to talk about here. So you show up prepared, ready to fucking go. Show up looking like $1 million. You don't want to show up looking like $1 million has been taken from you, which, if you're getting up late and kind of just like bypassing a shower and not taking the time you need in the morning, that's what's going to fucking happen. And like at that point, you've lost. You go in every day with less confidence than you should, and you're not going to be able to perform at optimal levels. So if, you're in a business, an organization that has like a specific uniform, you make sure that uniform's clean. You make sure the uniform, looks good. You make sure that uniform is pressed, and that your uniform is actually the uniform, not a variance or a deviation from the actual uniform, right? If you're someone who, you work somewhere where there's a specific dress code, a good rule of thumb, something we've talked about before, is to always dress one step above what's required. That's the way that you're going to stand out. That's how we get ahead. That's how we fucking win, is by standing out and just doing more than the competition.
It's true.
Yeah. So just an example of this, like, I'm just going to use my company as an example, like with our culinary team and our logistics team, right? They have two different uniforms. Okay. So the logistics team, they wear a paramilitary uniform. They're considered like the special operations of this company. They receive specialized training in every single department. They go where they're needed, when they're needed. And look, sometimes things get crazy around here. Like the business is constantly growing. It's constantly evolving. We have to make, spontaneous decisions to deploy individuals to other departments to support, to help out, to make sure that we hit our deadlines, and to make sure that that all of our customers are well taken care of. So their uniform is, they wear, right now it's their winter uniform. So they're wearing their military BDUs, the camouflage pants, with their combat boots, tucked into their combat boots that have blousing straps that, you tuck it into so it looks clean and neat. They have a like a BDU belt, which is like similar, which the exact belt that I wore when I was in the military with my camouflage uniform.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then they'll wear a Nutrition Solutions T-shirt, right, tucked into that uniform. Right. If it's cold, they have like these fleeces they wear, the branded fleeces and such. So it looks sharp. They look clean. They come in every day in uniformity amongst the team, and they go and they execute on the mission. But you get a guy that comes in wearing like a variation of that uniform. Let's say he has his his boots aren't tucked in, or his pants aren't tucked into his boots, right? His shirt's untucked. He's just looking fucking sloppy. His shirt's like all loose and like looking like he hasn't washed it in a few weeks, or maybe let his maybe let his fat older brother like sport it and stretch it all out. Like, I mean, think of that image. Like, what do you think if you know nothing about that person, and you look at that individual compared to, the person next to him who's just, sharp, cleaned, like everything expressed. What are you going to think right off rip?
That's it, man.
Yeah. Like, one of them has high standards. The other just clearly doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
So these type of things matter, guys. And look, the research has shown us that, everybody likes to say, don't judge a book by its cover. Well, unfortunately, there's research that actually validates that when we do judge a book by its cover, like 80% of the time, we're fucking spot on. Yeah. And the reason we're spot on is because
we're talking about appearance too. It's hard not to judge on appearance, which is just the way it is.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. Like, I'm sure, I guess maybe 20% of the time, there's exceptions according to this research, but 80% of the time, we're fucking spot on about our assumptions about these individuals based off the way that they're carrying themselves. And, those beliefs, those assumptions come from a personal experience. They come from things that we've witnessed before, things that we've had validated before, which gives us the ability to make a pretty accurate assumption more often than not. Yep. So guys, just being organized is being in control. This is something I preach often. Literally, like, there have been times before, throughout the tenure of the business where things got a little crazy, and we needed to make some adjustments. And there were times where I really didn't know, because due to lack of experience. We got to a new level. I'd never been at that level before, so I didn't know exactly what the path forward entailed. And literally every single time when we had stepped up our level of organization, our level of cleanliness, just our level of order, so to speak, all of a sudden things got more efficient. And it's really interesting the way that works, because people just don't have an awareness that, like, their environment, like how much it affects them, how like it affects their mood, it affects their outlook, it affects the pride that they take in the work. If you're in a working environment, things are, meticulously just organized, and where to go to get things that, you need to perform your job, and just everything is clean. The bathrooms are neat. They smell good. you're going to take a hell of a lot more pride than, if you're working in somewhere that you got to, dig through 17 drawers and ask 4 or 5 fucking people where to find a stapler. You go to the bathrooms, there's a wet piece of toilet paper halfway hanging out the toilet onto the fucking floor with dirty ass floors. It stinks. Like, these type of things matter, and what level we take these things to matter. So the more organized that you can be, the more neat, the more clean you can be, the more in control you're going to be. And I'm not just talking about your workspace. I'm talking about the workspace of the people around you. If you have somebody around you that's like, that's a fucking slob, people with high standards, high achievers, high performers, they're going to go out of their way, and they're going to not only organize their own workspace, they're going to take care of that one too. And eventually you're going to see that person's going to come around. All right?
Hopefully.
They will. That's how it works. Yeah. That's how it works, because people, the reason they don't prioritize these things is because they don't know what the other side tastes like. But as soon as they get a taste,
that's an interesting observation here, especially over the years, is coming in now and you walk into the bathroom, it's clean, everything's sorted out, there's mouthwash for you. It's like, it's pretty cool to see. And then not only that,
there's toothpicks in there.
There's all kinds of stuff. It's just awesome.
Little dental floss.
And just to see the way people take care of themselves and groom themselves more from when they first get here to like a couple months in, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. All these things matter, and I've learned that, and I want to instill that in our culture, because I want all the people here to feel that pride and to feel that that confidence that'll help them excel and perform at a higher level.
Yeah, and if you've never felt that way, raise your standards, because when you get a taste of that, you're never going to want to go back.
That's what it is, man.
Not everybody's a rock star as far as what they think, but whenever you try to be your best, you'll be shocked at how far you get and how the way that people think about you. It's pretty awesome.
And how you feel about yourself, most important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what I'm saying. You start to feel good about yourself, and then what happens is you change the opinion of everybody that sees you. It's so interesting.
And lift them up as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, the next thing that people that have high standards do in a professional capacity is they support their boss, they support their company, and they support the mission of the organization they work for, right? They understand that, they are there to facilitate a certain outcome, which is to win. And winning comes in a multitude of ways depending on what industry you're in. If you show up and, you just try to like do your best and outshine everybody and just, dude, you're going to look like a fucking asshole. Nobody's going to like you. Nobody's going to want to work with you. And nobody's going to like consider you for advancement. If you come in and just, again, are the one that has the super organized, like neat desk and like dresses sharp, and then basically just criticize everybody around you for not doing that. Yeah. That is not what we're talking about here, right? Like, so you got to support your boss, your team, your company. And the way that you do that is when you have high standards is, again, it doesn't matter if you like your boss or don't like your boss. You're there to support them. You're there to make them look good. If you can really get that through your fucking head and put your ego aside and your feelings aside, you'll start to win. Because having conflict with your boss, not supporting your boss, not being somebody that your boss knows that they can rely on is not a winning strategy. If, in fact, you want to move forward, if you want to stay exactly where the fuck you're at, or be at risk of losing your job at some point, if there's ever budget cuts, if there's ever a better person that comes along, keep being the guy or girl who, doesn't support their boss. And when, because you don't like your boss, they give you something to do, you only do it half-ass. That is not going to get you where you want to be. Okay. Unless we're talking about like something that involves like, morals, ethics, or something that is straight up illegal, you have to support your boss, and you have to do everything in your power to take things off his or her plate, to learn their job, to learn what they do, to take responsibilities off their plate so they can so you can make life easier for them. Because when you make life easier for your boss, it gives them the energy and the bandwidth and the opportunity to work on other things that will help them get promoted. Okay. And like, why would you want to help them get promoted? Well, if you're supporting your boss and they're able to move forward, guess what? Somebody's going to have to fill their role.
Yeah, right.
And if you're the person who's helped them get that promotion, the person who they like, can look at and know that they can rely on, who's helped take a load off. Like, what do you think is going to happen when it comes time for them to consider someone for that promotion? Like, you got to think strategically. Okay, this is chess, not checkers. Regardless, you always have to like recognize that it's not about you. It's not about you looking your best. It's about coming in and being part of the mission, being part of the company, and working with the people that are on your team to produce the sought after outcome. It's about the team. It is not about you. And when you have high standards, you realize that. You realize that sometimes, what you think is best and what you would like to do, it's not always going to go down like that. But that doesn't mean that, if the plan that you wanted to go with, the way you wanted to do it, if that's not what, was ultimately decided, that doesn't mean you lower your level of effort.
Yeah.
In fact, it means you do the opposite. You actually go harder than you would. You go harder and you do everything in your power to make sure the outcome that, look, I mean, and here's the thing, your plan might actually be better. Your plan might be better. It's not very often that like people's bosses like know less than they do, but it does happen. Okay. Your plan might in fact be better than the plan ultimately that, is decided to, that they decide to move forward with. But again, like whatever, like all that matters is winning. All that matters is fucking winning. You don't like do less. So, like you can prove a point and like not get the result. I'm like, oh, see, look, no, like
it will never get you ahead.
No, not only that, like you're losing at that point. Mm-hmm. It's not like your boss or Steve or Bill or John's plan. Like this is the team's plan. This is the fucking mission. And you have to understand that you are part of the mission. You're part of the organization. You're not always going to agree, but regardless, you always do your best. All right. Next thing, this one's super important. So lock in. People with high standards spend their time on only important, high value tasks that absolutely cannot be delegated. All right. People with high standards, like they respect their time and they understand like how truly valuable that it is. When you're working on high value tasks and, you're focusing on things that like truly move the needle, you also have metrics in place to gauge effectiveness, right? Like you have to have a way to measure results and actually identify if the things that you're doing are actually making an impact and are essentially like driving results, moving the needle. Number of hours worked. Nobody gives a fuck about that. People who have high standards will never say, I work 60, like shut the fuck, like dude, I can't even, like early this week, I'll be honest, somebody from my own company said that and I stopped him like right there. And I told him, I was like, listen to me. I hear you. I understand that you're a little, you're a little, what's the word? He wasn't frustrated. He was, he'd gotten into an argument with another member of the team. And he was basically coming to me for advice on how to approach the situation. And he was a little emotional, a little animated. And when, that came out, I was like, look, I'm going to stop you right there. I was like, don't say that. Not to me, not to anybody. Don't even think that. It's irrelevant. This situation is you throwing out how many hours you work. When people do that, I'm going to tell you, it's always a way to, like people do that normally as a way to justify something like wrong that they did that has absolutely fucking nothing to do. Right. That's the legitimate. Most of the time, that's what people do. Nobody cares about how many hours you work. In fact, like what really matters and what really like looks cool is when you're like getting a lot of shit done in like less time. Yeah. That's what it is. I mean, the game is being able to be efficient, being able to be effective, being able to get results in a lot less time than, other people. So, you have to have metrics in place to gauge how effective what you're doing actually is to where, you have the ability to adapt, to adjust, to spend more time doing this and less time doing that, whatever the case is. All high achievers, people with high standards, they absolutely have metrics in place. They don't have, wait on other people to come around and tell them, hey, this is working, this is not, make this adjustment, whatever. They don't wait on other people to, basically let them know if they're winning or not. They set their actions up and, do what they need to do to basically force that result. And the result that we're talking about is winning. People with high standards next, like they set and meet deadlines no matter what. right? When a task comes up and they have to do something, they don't just throw it on the fucking list and I'll get to it when I get to it. I mean, that's what most people do. And that's why, most people have a hard time getting things done. No. What gets scheduled gets done. So if you have a task, you got to set a deadline for yourself. And then you have to do everything in your power, which is a lot, to meet the deadline. You have a deadline, so that means you got to work on, the thing that you're working on a little bit on this day, a little bit this day, whatever, to where you hit the deadline. I mean, it's literally that fucking simple. People tend to overcomplicate it, but that's what it is. And when you're given a deadline, when a task is delegated to you and you're given a deadline, people with high standards, they meet that deadline no matter what, because they have respect for their superiors. They have respect for the organizations. Most importantly, they have respect for themselves. Yep. Anything to add to that part?
No, it's true. If you have to respect the people you're working for and understand that whatever you're doing is critical to the mission. And if you drop the ball, you're interfering with all kinds of problems.
All kinds of shit.
Yeah,
all kinds of shit. You like that rabbit hole, I mean, is fucking deep. Deadlines are given for a fucking reason.
Yeah.
And that's what people have to understand. It's, you are part of a team, you're part of a mission, and when you're given a deadline, that's it. Now, of course, when let's say that, you're prepared, you're organized, you set your actions up in such a way where, you're working on what needs to be worked on to meet that deadline, and some unexpected variable pops up that is completely out of your control, and it very rarely are things completely out of control. It happens once in a while. But when you're prepared and doing things in an efficient, organized manner, if something pops up, like let's say that you needed to order something to complete this certain task and the thing was on back order for 10 days, right? In that situation, provided you looked for other outlets and vendors and such to purchase that thing, in that instance, look, you're not going to meet the fucking deadline. So what you do in that situation is you make sure you don't wait to the last fucking minute to find that shit out, right? So you're organized, you're prepared. And as soon as you find that out, you get it on order, and then you immediately report that situation to the team, to the supervisor, to whomever needs to know that this project, this task is going to be postponed due to that situation. Yeah. To add to that, if it's something that is critical, you also have a responsibility at that point to come up with some backup options and backup strategy. Maybe they're not the most ideal, but in some situations, like if things have to be done, you got to figure out
the best way. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what people with high standards do. They fucking solve problems. Some things are out of their control, but very, very often, or not very often, is it impossible. There's always something you can do, and people with high standards figure out a way to get it done.
Agreed.
So next thing is, people with high standards, obviously they take pride in their work, right? They work really hard to do the best they can with everything that, their name is attached to, everything they touch. And they're going to take the time to proof their work before submitting it, before making it live, before sending that email, before whatever, any number of things. You proofread your work, you proof your work, you look it over before it goes live, before it gets submitted to the boss, before it goes out to the client, before whatever. That's an important one.
It's a hugely important one, and one that I learned the hard way by just, I was a pretty good writer when I was younger, and I would write things, but I would do them, and submit them. And then I met people who were really good writers. And when I would work on projects with them, I'd be like, come on, that's good enough. No, it's not. And then we would do it over and over and over until it was perfect.
Attention to detail.
But what I learned was the end result blew me away. And it was something I was really proud of. And I changed my ways because of things like that.
Yeah, it's not until, again, like we mentioned in the beginning, like you think you have high standards until you meet someone who really has high standards. And and that's always the case at no matter what level. Now you might actually have high standards compared to some of the.
There's always room to go up, right? That's the thing. Like
100%.
Always.
There's no ceiling with this. There's no finish line. That's what it is here. Like that's what we're doing. We're always looking for the next level. And when it relates to having high standards, there's always a higher standard. And we have a responsibility to figure out what needs to be done to achieve that level of excellence. people with have high standards, they communicate well. They communicate up and down the chain. They communicate to the rest of the team. They communicate to their customers when needed, right? They communicate because people need to know what the hell's going on. Yeah, people need to know what the hell's going on. The flow of information is so critical to the success of any organization, team, and mission. And when you don't communicate things, like, I mean, I guess I use an example of with the deadline, right? Like that part that was on back order. And let's say that, you know, the deadline approaches, the person who gave you the task, they come to you like, you know, 3 hours after the deadline. They give you 2 weeks, and they like, hey, so where's this thing? I need that we go live tomorrow. And like, oh well, that's not bad, you know, the thing's on back order. So it's like, dude, you fucking suck. Yeah. You suck as a human being if you are the type of person who does that. And look, some of you guys might do that. Some of my own fucking people do that. Yeah. I'm going to be honest. Sure. And I shouldn't say they suck as a human being. You suck as a professional. That's not professional. Yes. As a human being, you absolutely need work in your character, because what you fail to realize is you have now put that person in such a shitty position.
The machine that was moving forward is now just broken down.
And now that person has to go explain to all the people that are going to be affected that had you just told them 3 days, 4 days, fucking 2, even the day before what was going on, they would then be able to mitigate any sort of some issue or come up with a backup plan. But because you were too fucking lazy to simply communicate something so simple, you've now fucked up the entire thing, as well as compromised your trust with that individual. Mm-hmm. So communication is super important. And it's not just with things like that. It's just overall, when people know what the hell's going on, like, things are just better. And it's not just like, hey, you know, I need this, or hey, like, you need to do this. Just having a general understanding of, you know, why certain things are done the way that they are, it gives people a better understanding, keeps people on the same page. And it essentially creates a situation where, you know, the team is unified, marching towards a common objective, as opposed to having, you know, 10 people in a boat. And although everybody might be rowing, like, you got people rowing in fucking different directions because they just simply don't know. Mm-hmm. Communication is so important, and we did a podcast on it, you know, and it was voted, I think it was 2018. LinkedIn did a survey, and communication was voted the #1 most valuable skill in business, and I couldn't agree more, because
it really is.
It is. I mean, it's everything, and I think people get confused of what communication isn't talking to your coworkers and bullshitting about like what you're doing over the weekend, or like, you know, what happy hour you're hitting up after work. Like, communication is discussing things that are, you know, having to do with the job, the mission, and the success of the organization, making sure that other people, I mean, you could be up on everything. The person next to you could be up on everything, but what about the new guy? It's his third day and is struggling. Like, like, he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. A lot of times, man, some simple communication, getting people on the same page to understand where they are and what's really going on. It gives them the ability to actually like start like thinking and looking to solve problems. And that's the thing. If there are some problems going on, and you have like lower level employees that like are just there doing their fucking job, thinking they're crushing it, thinking everything's good, and they don't have communication, they don't have the information, they don't have the understanding that like, hey, there's you know, some things that need to be tightened up, or having some issues with this. Like, you now have less people that are proactively looking to find a solution. And some of those people, like at their level, they could probably figure out a better way of doing things. But if they don't know there's a problem, they don't know there's a situation, they don't know that there's anything that need to be improved upon, why would they kind of go into that like default, like problem solving mode? Yeah. They wouldn't. So communication is important, just making sure that everybody's on the same page, making sure that, you know, everybody knows where you are as it relates to, you know, if you're working on something that has, you know, multiple individuals that are involved, so they know where you're at. And you don't ever want to put other people in a shitty situation where they're waiting on you for something and you're making them look bad, or you're adding stress to their plate. Sometimes that is going to happen. But again, that's where, like, if you can't get them what they need, you got to tell them up front with as much notice as possible, so they can prepare. And that's the thing, by the way, whether it's personal or professional. Like, I think we gave an example before on an episode about, like, and it was regarding like in a personal situation. If you lend somebody money, right, and they tell you, hey, I need to borrow a few $1,000 and I'll pay you back in 30 days. Okay, no problem. Here's, $3,000, whatever. Now, 30 days comes and goes and you don't get your money back. The difference in that situation, if they let you know before like that 30 days that they weren't going to be able to do it, that weren't going to be able to pay you back, and kind of here's the plan to get me caught up. The difference between doing that and them just like not calling or not saying anything and you having to call them, it's literally night and day. It's nowhere fucking. I mean, ideally, yes, you would like to get, but it's not a problem. Like at that point, like the stress in that situation, it's not really there because you shouldn't be loaning people money if you can't afford to loan people money, first of all. But as long as people communicate, let you know what's going on, it absolves.
That's all you want to know.
That's it. Yeah. It's as simple as that. So we'll move on. And people with high standards, professionals, people who are out there making shit happen, follow up. Okay? They don't view following up. See, a lot of people, from my experience, look at following up as like a chore or an extra or a hassle or like, I have to follow up. And it's always an indication of their mentality and where they're currently at. The follow-up is a mandatory part of the game for those of us who are looking to make a big impact. And like, that's where the magic happens. Like whether it's with another team member, a supervisor, a subordinate, or a customer, the key to making shit happen, getting shit done, and becoming very, very successful is following up proactively, aggressively, and in a manner that like forces the result that you're after. Because as convenient as it would be for all of us to just say, hey, I need this, whatever, and for it to actually fucking happen the first time you ask, it doesn't go down like that. Like people are busy, people are lazy, people get distracted, people get off track, whatever. Like you got to follow up. And more importantly, you have to change your mindset about following up and look at it as part of what needs to happen to fucking win.
It's part of the communication we talked about earlier.
Fact. When you take pride in your work and you really care, following up is effortless.
Yeah, it is. And it makes a big difference.
So. Massive difference. Now, as it relates to following up with customers, here's the thing. Salespeople, right? Like you got salespeople out there that are crushing it, that are making, millions, hundreds of thousands, high, 60, 70, 80, 90,000. And then you have salespeople that are fucking starving, right? The difference in how successful a salesperson is comes down to the follow-up, okay? And the unsettling truth and the statistics are that 48% of salespeople never follow up, okay? 80% now of transactions reportedly are made on the 5th to 12th contact. Now, of course, that depends on industry, but I mean, look, the 5th or 12th, even like low end, you got to fucking follow up if you want to get the sale, if you want to make shit happen. So on top of that, 25% of salespeople will follow up one time, and then if they don't hear back, they quit. So basically, 75% of people don't follow up, right? Because that's not, because I think people hear, I got to follow up. Okay, I've heard that. Follow-up's important. I'm in sales. Then they follow up one time, like, I've done what I'm supposed to do. I'm winning. Right. But no, you're fucking not. Like, dude, you got to follow up. You got to be hungry. You got to be aggressive. People are fucking busy. People aren't like sitting around waiting for you to call, waiting for you to text, waiting for you to email. You have to be aggressive, but you be aggressive in a thoughtful way. You be aggressive in a way that comes across to them that you're not being pushy or overbearing, that you actually care and that you respect the fact that they're busy. And you want to make sure that you're doing everything in your power to help them.
True.
The magic happens in the follow-up, guys. Next thing. So yeah, another thing that people with high standards do. This is something that has really helped me grow this business from nothing, with no experience, with no money, no investors, none of that shit, is prioritizing developing relationships with coworkers, your team, customers, vendors, and other professional contacts. Relationships matter. They really matter when it comes to business, and you want to have good relationships with all of the people who essentially, either that you work with or, that could send you business, that will keep giving you business, that vendors that essentially have to provide you materials or support to run your business. If people like you, they're going to want to work harder for you and with you. Sure. It's as simple as that. Yeah. And when you prioritize those relationships, again, it comes down to caring. It comes down to being vested in the mission. It makes things a hell of a lot easier. I mean, I've cultivated a lot of relationships with like athletes and celebrities, and it's like, it's done, that was on a personal level, but it's spilled over into the business, and it's done really awesome things for our business.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that, not everybody can like day one start like, being friends with like celebrities and athletes and such, but it starts with creating good relationships with the people who are around you every day. Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty easy thing to do when you want to win and you're concerned with being a good human being, which, I mean, look, beyond all this shit that we talk about on this podcast, like that's fucking number one. You know what I mean? Like if you're not intent and focused and concerned with being a good human being, none of this shit is going to resonate with you.
If you can find opportunities to like help people out, they always remember that. And they talk to other people about that as well. It's awesome.
Yeah. And that's actually on the list as well. But yeah, the other thing we talk about this often, you always go above and beyond. You do a little extra. I mean, going above and beyond is the MO of high achievers, all right? When it becomes part of who you are, it doesn't feel like, you're having to do more work or like going out of your way. When you do it and you get the results along with like the perspective of how much better it is doing it that way, as opposed to just simply doing like the bare minimum of what's required, like everybody else, and being fucking average, you gain that, like just that mental clarity. And again, it becomes who you are. So when people who don't have that mentality currently, they hear it, unfortunately, they might be like, oh, that's going to be extra work for, no, look, it's extra work to do the bare minimum and stay right where the fuck you're at and starve and struggle and to constantly do nothing more than just barely keep your head above water. That, my friends, is a hell of a lot harder than going out of your way to do a little more with everything that you do, because not only is it going to produce massively positive results in your life, you feel fucking like literally as soon as you do it, like you look at what you just done and you just get that immediate come up in confidence, the little hit of serotonin. It makes you feel good.
Sure.
It makes you feel good. And look, like feeling good is important, and it's not a birthright. It's something that we have to earn through our actions. Yep. So yeah, and then the I think this is the last thing as it relates to professional. There's two more. Is you help other people. I mean, I could just leave it at that. Like, you help other people. You help other people because it's the right thing to do. You help other people because it feels good to know that, you're directly a part of creating a situation where someone is now able to do better and be better and feel better. And it comes back to you in so many ways. But that's what people with high standards do. Like, if they see someone who's below standard, they don't pretend like that's not the case. They see it and they address it. Mm-hmm. And really, like, people with high standards, they are focused and adamant about helping people, the people that are around them, up their game and raise their standards as well. Yeah. And do it in a way that's not, like invasive or again, make them feel like a piece of shit. I mean, sometimes you gotta, you don't go day one and have a conversation with somebody and just go in on them. But again, like if you're working with somebody and they know better and, they know better based off past performance, based off of the experience and the relationship there, and they're fucking up. Like, if you have high standards, you're not afraid to have that conversation. You're not afraid to let someone know that they're slipping, they're fucking up, and you don't appreciate it. You don't appreciate them going out like that because they're better than that. And when they act in a way that's contrary to what they're capable of, it hurts you to see them do themselves like that. And you want what's best for them, which is why you're willing to have that conversation and willing to pull them aside and let them know when they're fucking up if that situation presents itself.
Agreed.
Yeah. So the last thing I have here is when, you're a professional, when you're looking to, consistently up your game and raise your standard and maintain a constant high standard with everything you do, you're always sharpening your sword, developing your craft, spending time, on your personal development, and just constantly learning new things, which will, of course, include staying current on, recent developments in your field, in the work that you do in your industry. You're always staying up on the latest shit to where you're able to be the most effective at what you do. And, beyond that, again, like the personal development, I literally don't know a single successful person that doesn't work on personal development by, reading, listening to podcasts, watching informative YouTube videos, just doing things to evolve and learn new things. I don't know one single person that doesn't do that. And there's something to be said about that. Yeah. So again, like I left that one for last because that's something, obviously I talk about, like you got to do the personal development. It's the most important work of your life. That'll never change. I mean, hopefully, when I'm 95 years old, I'm still preaching the good word and still doing everything I can to help people. That'll always be the underlying thesis because it's what it is, man. Like, it's just what it is. Like, we can get better one of two ways. Experience, which of course is going to come organically, takes a little longer. It takes a fucking long time, if I'm being completely honest. Or training, and we have to train our minds to think different and to be better. So yeah, that really wraps it up as far as things that people can do on a professional level, like the personal level stuff. I'm gonna just go through them quickly, man, because I think we really raised some awesome points that hopefully people really locked into, and will implement and execute. All this other stuff is shit that, I mean, if you're doing the stuff we just talked about, chances are you're doing this stuff too. I want to mention it because I did put it in the outline. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but when you have high standards, you prioritize your health, right? You eat good foods, you work out, you exercise, and you get enough sleep. I'm not saying you fucking necessarily have to sleep 8 hours a night, right? Like, there are going to be nights where if you have high standards, like sometimes you get to meet deadlines, sometimes shit has to get done. But you prioritize your health, right? You do everything you can to make sure that you're operating at your best, physically, mentally, emotionally. Without your health, like, none of the other shit matters. It just simply does not. Like, we could, like, if you're eating like shit all the time and fueling yourself with shit that is not like real food, you're not going to feel the way that you need to feel. You're not going to think the way that, you're going to need to think to do any of the things that we just said. It's just not possible. Yeah. So we have to fuel ourselves with nourishing, nutritious food that makes us feel well, that makes us feel energetic, that, makes it so when we wake up in the morning, we're not like brain like foggy as fuck and just dreading pulling our fat asses out of bed and then having to go in the mirror and like see something that we don't want to see. Like, you got to prioritize your health and do everything that you can do, which again is a lot, to optimize how you feel and how you look and what you do. Another thing is when, you have high standards, you nurture your most important personal relationships, family, close friends, etc. No matter how busy you get, no matter how much you're grinding and trying to kick ass and move mountains, you're always going to find the time to let the people who you care about know how much you care. And look, like, that is a very simple thing. I think people tend to overthink it, but just literally like scheduling. I mean, this is something that I've done in the past, and I'm doing a better job now of keeping up with this, because it comes more natural to me now. But when I was getting really, really busy, I noticed I was losing touch with some people and going like long periods of time without speaking to people, and really just, I don't want to lose people when they've seen me from the outside, see me growing, seeing evolving. Like, I don't ever want people to know who I once maybe talked to a little more, think that I think that like I'm just above them or now, and because that's not the case. So what I started to do is start to set reminders on my phone. Monday through Friday, I would send out one text one text to somebody who I hadn't spoken to in a long time, or maybe, lost touch with or whatever, just let them know I was thinking about them, letting them know that I cared. And it was awesome. And it allowed me to keep up with a lot more fucking people than I ever otherwise would have been able to. Because I know a lot of people, man. I know a lot of people. I've lived in a bunch of different places. I've done a lot of traveling, and relationships are really important to me. And it's funny because like it helped. It didn't just help me feel better. Like it helped me continue to nurture that relationship. So right. Yeah, like guys, like we're going to get busy, we're going to grow. And don't get me wrong, you are going to lose people, and that's fine. We're talking about two different things. We're talking about the people that you don't want to lose.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to, make sure your friends, your family, you always have to make sure to just like have that balance. I'm going to say work-life balance, because part of, being a good communicator is making sure that people in your life understand why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah. Especially with your family. I mean, if you're working hard and you're trying to do big things and accomplish big goals, your family should support that, but they're only going to support that if they understand why you're doing it. And a lot of times, like people do that and go hard because they want to provide a better life for their family, and they want to provide a nicer, just, this environment, just quality of life overall. But if they never take the time to have that conversation with their family, they're not going to see it like that. We think that people see things the same way that we do. No. Yeah, that's like never
communication,
the case. Right? Exactly. And of course, you got to surround yourself with other people who are on the same mission. Not necessarily the same exact mission, but the mission of improving, of being the best person that they can be, and other people who demonstrate having high standards. And you need to make sure you don't have shitbags in your life. You don't have losers in your life. You cut out all the people who just suck the energy out of your fucking soul. Like you got to get rid of those fucking people, because regardless of how high you want your standards to be, regardless of how you may think your standards currently are, if you allow people who don't have high standards around you, in your space, or like around your energy, it's going to take away. Yeah. No matter how much you like think that it won't, or how much you don't want it to, it absolutely will fuck up your process. And this is the last thing I have here is, when you're working to raise your standards and maintain high standards, you recognize the importance of protecting your energy. You don't waste time like fucking around on social media, keeping up with the Kardashians, or following every fitness account that makes you feel like shit about the fact that you're not in as good a shape as them, right? Like you're not spending hours and hours and hours watching TV or Netflix. I'm not saying you don't ever watch TV. I'm saying like, when you're done with work, you don't just go plop on the couch and just lay there until you fall asleep and then get up the next day and do it again. Like that stuff takes energy, believe it or not. And it's energy that you could be using a hell of a lot more productively. You don't watch the news under any fucking circumstances. Don't watch the news. The news is there to keep you in a perpetual state of fear, worry, and it's all negativity. Like you don't need that shit. Now, some people who watch like CNN and whatever, like I would advise to limit how much you're doing that, but in no circumstances watch like the headline news, like the local news, the shit that's there to poison your mind and basically keep you engaged. So basically they can make money off the advertising and the advertisers that pay them to put their commercials on. That's what it is. The big fucking game to keep you in fear, to keep you waiting for the next story, and to like be mindful. If you're someone who watches the news, like dude, if you just stop doing that, your life would change. But watch, like pay attention the next time and like do like a tally of how many stories that are on there. Make like a little column, like positive and negative. And then like see at the end of a 30-minute show, like where the fuck you're at. And that will right there be your metrics as far as whether or not you should be watching the shit. Mm-hmm. That's all I got for today, brother. You got anything?
No, man, just that we can all raise our standards. I'm encouraged to raise mine more after this. And I encourage you guys to do the same thing, because it does matter and it does pay off. It's a great investment. Yeah, guys, that's what it is, man. The key to a better life, the key to us unlocking our true potential and just becoming the people that we were born to become, is making the conscious, dedicated decision to raise our standards. All right. If you want a better life,
you got to raise your standards. You already know the deal, guys. Start today.
Trouble on my